If you live in South Africa, you've gotten used to a government that says a lot of words, effectively never does what the words actually, says they will do, but at least they're saying things. And this has become sort of bog standard practice for the South African government. Whenever the ANC is in trouble, whenever the ANC faces sort of headwinds, be this international headwinds or just headwinds at home, they're very quick to come up with empty platitudes and empty sort of gestures to try and put people at ease, to try and get people to calm down so that the ANC can get back to the thing that they're actually super efficient at, and that is looting the economy dry. This article by the Daily Investor that shows that more than 1 trillion rand, 1 trillion rand moved between 100 politically connected individuals through BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. That's what the government does, and most of those 100 politically connected individuals will be people like family members, sons, daughters, friends, cousins. One of the richest men in South Africa is actually a cousin of the president and happened to have gotten his mining operation from BEE, and what the government then did to help. But this time, the incredible people over in our government, this, of course, would be this man right here, the moron of a president that we have, announced that South Africa is having arguably one of the most useless initiatives in the history of ever, and that is
the National Dialogue.
Now, I watched his video on the National Dialogue because I wanted to understand, what is it? It turns out that in the first 5 minutes of him sort of talking about the National Dialogue, he doesn't explain what the National Dialogue is. Instead, he just...
An initiative that has been in discussion by a number of leaders in our country and many other people for some time. This initiative has been gathering great support and enthusiasm since it was proposed last year. It has been endorsed by a wide range of formations across society. Over the last few months, we've been engaged in discussions with various entities on the purpose and the form of the National Dialogue. In the wake of these consultations, there is broad agreement that given the challenges our country is facing at the moment, we should convene the National Dialogue.
Instead, he just says the word National Dialogue over and over again, giving multiple examples of how the National Dialogue is a national dialogue, and the dialogue is very, very important. The next 5 minutes of the 12-minute speech is him explaining how this national dialogue needs to happen in order to make South Africa richer, I guess, or at least not failing. Again, I still don't know what the national dialogue actually is. And then the last 2 minutes is an explanation of when it's happening with some conventions. And the first convention is really just to establish the national dialogue, because we need a national dialogue, apparently. Then next year, we'll have another convention, which will be to reaffirm what was established at the first convention. So, I don't know, guys. I genuinely don't know what this national dialogue is, but it's interesting to say the least. I mean, as far as empty platitudes go. I do have, of course, some ideas as to what it is. This, by the way, doesn't make it any better. So you have, for example, my fellow South Africans. Today, I wish to address you about the National Dialogue, an initiative that has been in discussion by a number of leaders in our country and many other people for some time now. This initiative has been gathering great support and enthusiasm since it was proposed last year. It has been endorsed by a wide range of formations across society. Over the last few months, we have been engaged in discussions with various entities on the purpose and the form of the National Dialogue. In the wake of these consultations, there is broad agreement that given the challenges our country is facing at the moment, we should convene the National Dialogue. The idea of holding a dialogue is not a new concept in our country. In many ways, having dialogues is part of our DNA as a nation. At every important moment in history of our country, we have come together as a nation to confront our challenges and forge a path into the future in dialogue with one another. Through dialogue, we were able to deal with the challenges that the apartheid system had caused in our country and achieve peace and overcome violence. We established a democracy and ended apartheid. Following the negotiation process, we used dialogue to start building a united nation where once there had been conflict and division. We achieved all this because we came together in dialogue to discuss our difficulties. What difficulties? We know what the difficulties are. The problem is that you guys are not building anything. You're not doing anything. For more than 30 years, we have worked together to realize the promise of our democratic constitution. We have made great strides as a nation, expanding freedom, deepening democracy, and building a better life for millions. Let's see if that's actually true. South Africa's youth unemployment rate over the last 15 years has actually increased to now 47.1%, although, and this should most likely be mentioned, that's not the expanded definition of unemployment. That's the government's definition of unemployment. The government only counts people who are actively looking for work as quote unquote unemployed. Everyone who isn't looking for work is excluded because that number is over 60%. It's almost 65% of people aged between 15 and 34 that is unemployed and also are not looking for work. So just to point that out. So let's look at how, oh shit, that also doesn't really work because South Africans are now poorer than what they were 15 years ago. In this article, it actually goes through how bad the GDP growth has actually declined. Here you can see this graph of that. There's articles all over the place showing how incredibly bad the ANC has been on providing homes for people, on providing education. This, by the way, is the number one problem. You see, my government are masters of deception. So, for example, when they collect statistics and when they set up the education system, they will consistently change the education system to lower the grades. We did a video on this not long ago. For example, here you see pass rates for school leavers in South Africa are failing students and universities because consistently when you have, in this article, they actually go through the entire history, the gaps that's been created as a result of this. I'll just quickly summarize it for you. When you have students that are failing, instead of the Minister of Education going in and trying to beef up education, they just adjust it. So there's numerous adjustments that's been made. And when you ask Grok about it, you actually find that they continuously lower the pass rate. But then another thing they did is from 2008, I believe, 2009, they actually started to just give students from previously disadvantaged backgrounds a bunch of percentages, right? So you just start off with about 25%. So you just need to get a couple of answers correct, and then you at least get your matric. Because ultimately, it's not about whether or not these students are educated. They couldn't care less about that. It's about at least telling the world that our education rate is very, very high. And this is exactly where this comes from. If you look at the actual literary rate or literacy rate of South Africa, it looks great, right? Men and women across the board, about 97 to 98% of all kids can read. 15 to 24-year-olds can read at least simple statements and simple sentences. It gets a hell of a lot worse when you actually understand that what they can read is genuinely simple statements. If something gets too difficult, like a novel or even a non-fictional book, they cannot read that. And they can definitely not read to understand. About 81% of young people in South Africa, age 10, has no ability to read with comprehension. This obviously is going to pull through to adulthood, and you will find this prevalent everywhere. So I'm not entirely sure when the government states that they've made the country better, based on what? Education is worse. Housing is worse. The GDP and the money in the pockets of South Africans is worse. Youth unemployment rates is worse. So what exactly, if anything, did the government do? And then, perhaps most importantly, my question again comes back to this silly national dialogue. And I'll tell you why they're doing it. It's not because they actually care about what people in South Africa thinks. And you know this because you look at this list of people that are apparently invited to speak and you realize that you don't know any of these people. None of these people. One of them is Mia Leroux, Miss South Africa 2024. It's like, oh, what is that bastion of education and intelligence going to be telling us? So I don't know these people. I don't care. Fundamentally, here's the truth of it. The ANC wants a mandate to continue its transformation of the economy. The problem right now is that the ANC does not have a mandate. The ANC lost the last elections. Well, they won it technically with less than 40% of the vote, which means they don't have a national mandate. They cannot just push stuff through. But by convening a national dialogue, They can allow for the dialogue to lead to the outcome where the people of South Africa say, we want inclusive, transformative economic reforms. And that's what we want. This then gives the government the mandate to start transforming the economy. Now, of course, the economy isn't actually going to be transformed to the betterment of actual South Africans, just to be clear. Again, BEE only really benefits a handful of people. Everyone else gets stolen from. And this is genuinely what the government is after. They don't care about getting the ordinary South African out of poverty. And the reason for that is whenever a black person comes out of poverty, moves to the city, and starts to get an education, they inevitably start voting not ANC. So the ANC has a vested interest in ensuring that they don't educate their people, that they don't allow their people too big of or too good of a lifestyle, because that keeps them in power. This national dialogue is just nonsense. That doesn't mean anything. It's not going to amount to any change. Anyone that thinks that it will, this is what the ANC does. They're under pressure. They know that America is breathing down their necks. They know that the world is currently watching. And this is a nice way for them to say, hey, look at how forthcoming and inviting we are. We want to talk to our people. Look, we voted for you. Well, we didn't, but some people voted for you. You're supposed to be in charge. You're supposed to run the country. Why do you need us to tell you how to do your jobs? If you were fit for your jobs, we wouldn't need to tell you how to do it. Why would you even trust that the public, a public that can't even read with comprehension, at about 80%, by the way, of people cannot read with comprehension, why would you trust them to tell you where to take the economy next? I think that is a bad idea, and I fundamentally don't think that anything here will change, but it is good optics. And when you know the ANC, you know that that's all that matters. But let me know in the comment section down below if you agree, disagree. I'd love to read your thoughts. And as always, stay hanging on and do whatever else you need to do, because I have a feeling that this year is just getting started, and this country is just getting on the path to absolute ruin and destruction. We'll enjoy the ride as it goes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace.